Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, AI-Powered Promotions for Grocers, sponsored by Daisy Intelligence, CART, and Winsight Grocery Business. My name is Sterling Hawkins, and I'll be moderating today's event. So throughout our presentation, I really encourage you to interact with our speakers. You can type in questions using the Q&A widget on your screen, and we'll answer any questions live at the end of the presentation, at least as many as we have time for. Now, you can also customize your window by moving and resizing the widgets on your screen. If you're experiencing any technical issues, please use the help button at the bottom right of your screen, and we'll get that taken care of for you. Now, we're also recording today's session, and we'll email you as soon as that recording is available. So I want to start with just a couple of words about AI. So several years ago, a conversation like this would be almost space age. But in the world today, it's becoming almost necessary. You see, the world we live in today, we're starting to see things like drones delivering products. We're talking to bots, and purchases can even happen in virtual reality. And it's literally disrupting every industry at once. Everything is changing. There's an innovation gap that's growing between what most of retail is currently delivering and what is technologically possible. All of a sudden, we've hit this turning point where things like self-driving cars and facial recognition and voice recognition and robots, technologies are just helping develop more autonomous decision-making, and they're doing it in an economically feasible way. And all of a sudden, it's these once pie-in-the-sky kinds of technologies are now driving an unprecedented rate of change. And in the world of change, it's the ability to make better decisions and faster decisions that really becomes critical, right? And that's what this conversation is about. Social economic academics have agreed that we're actually in the midst of, in the beginning of, the fourth industrial revolution. You know, first came mechanical production, and then mass production, then the computer revolution. And this fourth industrial revolution is led by the expansion of AI technologies. And it's different than all of the previous revolutions, because in it, we're seeing this disruption of long-established players in favor of those with new decision-making powers. And the ability to make better decisions and monetize this knowledge is just as critical, especially to the grocery industry, as customer service, site locations, quality of assortment, and competitive price. So one retailer recently told us, I've been in grocery for 30 years, and I have seen more change in the last 5 years than in all the previous 25 years combined. We just can't ignore this type of change. And I think we're all seeing that, right? We're all seeing this increased price pressure and multi-channel shopping as online and mobile take off and are essentially costs of entry. Consolidation is happening at the same time as these large new entrants are coming into the market like Aldi and Lidl from the EU. And groceries even having an impact where these traditionally general merchandisers like Walmart are really focusing on the grocery space. And from all of that, there's just data everywhere, from online, from in-store, from mobile interactions. And we just cannot forget that our friends at Amazon just bought Whole Foods several months back, which brings together the largest online player into brick and mortar grocery. And underlining all of that is this artificial intelligence, right? This unseen advantage that some of these guys have. Now, again, my name's Sterling, and I've been in the retail industry and really focused on promotions for the better part of 20 years. And it's my pleasure to introduce our experts today, people that are on the ground using this stuff and are more knowledgeable about it than anyone. First is Frank Scorpiniti, CEO of Earth Fare. Frank's an accomplished leader with extensive retail transformation experience. As a lifelong retailer, he's had roles such as the CEO of Rexall Pharma Plus, and executive roles at Duane Reade and Logs. He's leading Earth Fair's rapid growth and vision of making it easy for communities to live healthier, happier, and longer lives. Welcome, Frank. Good to have you with us.
Glad to be here, Sterling. Thank you.
Great. And our next guest is Gary Saarenvirta. Often interviewed and quoted as an AI evangelist, he is literally a rocket scientist. He's lived the evolution of big data in retail and built multiple generations of data warehouse and BI platforms and tools. Gary is highly active in the AI community throughout the technology's development, and really excited to have you with us, Gary. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
We're out to do a couple of things today. First, we really want to understand what AI is, right? Because there's been a lot of misinformation out there and how it's super relevant to the promotion space in grocery. We'll then understand the results of how it has actually worked around the promotions at Earth Fair. And then we'll get into a bit of the science behind it and how it's a really workable technology today for any chains that have 25 and more stores before getting to what's next. We're going to do it all in about 40 minutes, so we've got some time for Q&A at the end. And with that, let's dive in. So, Gary, let's start with you. There's a lot of noise in the media around AI, and I think it's kind of confusing to understand what AI really is with all of the marketing hype. What does AI really mean?
Yeah, I'm happy to share a definition that we use with our customers that seems to connect. I think it's important for people to understand what AI is. It's not a badge of honor that you wear, let's say, wear AI and someone else isn't. But the difference between AI and predictive analytics is an important distinction to make. So I would start with this. If you were to teach, if you're only analyzing historical data, that's all you have, you're using history, then that's really statistical analysis to the past. No matter what the fancy algorithms that exist today, like deep learning, and you hear of all these technologies, it's still statistical analysis. You analyze historical data. And if you analyze historical data, you can only act on what you've previously seen. So you can only exploit your knowledge. To learn anything new would require you to conduct experiments by collecting new data, doing a new action, and that could only occur at the pace of time. So to learn of 1 year of new activity, you'd have to do 1 year of experiments to get the learning out of that. And so that wouldn't be very practical. For example, in a self-driving car, you wouldn't put a car with an empty brain on the road and let it drive and crash 1 million times, run people over, run into objects. And to create a label to train, you have to have some ability to simulate. So that's a key defining feature of artificial intelligence for us, is the ability to simulate the future. That means that a car that has never driven before can be put into a simulator in the computer that's a model of the world, and you can simulate and train it to drive, and it learns to drive before you ever put it into the real world. So that's an important distinction, the ability to simulate. And so in the case of what Daisy does, we create models of the environment in retail, a theory of retail that allows us to simulate retail to learn faster than the pace of time. Because if I have powerful computing, I could learn to do 1 million hours of driving in 1 day, so I can learn faster than the pace of time, and then learn new actions that have never been taken before. So we can simulate all the possible alternatives with some randomness. That's how human beings learned as a child. You would try to put the square block into the round hole, into the star-shaped hole, and you kind of randomly tried, and you eventually got it right, and then you remembered that, and you took that forward. In a similar way, you would randomly simulate the number of actions, and from that simulation, learn to take new actions that result in the positive outcomes. So an AI system would have to simulate, would be able to make decisions without human intervention, so it's an autonomous system. AI wants to also to make long-term gains, not necessarily take the best answer today. So it's about the ability to sacrifice. So an example would be One of our clients wanted to do Easter bunnies, chocolate Easter bunnies, in their paper circular 1 week before Easter, and the Daisy system said do it 2 weeks before Easter. Because although it's the best product that 1 week before Easter, it would be even better if you did it 2 weeks before, if you consider the 2-month period around Easter. So that ability to sacrifice, like in the game of chess, you could sacrifice a pawn to win the game over a longer period of time. And then at the same time, any of the new actions you take and you measure in the marketplace, the AI system would be able to learn and self-adjust. And so I think these are the definitions that we use for artificial intelligence, which really distinguishes an AI system from predictive analytics.
Yeah, I love it. Learning faster than the pace of time really stood out. And Frank, you've been learning faster than the pace of time at Earth Fair for a little while now. Give us a little background on Earth Fair, what you guys are up to, if you would.
Sure, Sterling. Thank you. A little background on Earth Fair. We were founded in 1975 here in Asheville, North Carolina, with our first store, with a simple mission that we were going to bring the healthiest assortments to our customers in North America, guided by a food philosophy. And that philosophy really is the spirit that drives our merchants and our business forward. You know, we have a very unique assortment, and that we commit to our customers that we shall never have anything in our stores that contains artificial ingredients, hormones, artificial colors, preservatives. In fact, our assortments are so clean, we like to say you can shop at Earth Fair blindfolded, knowing you could never bring anything home to your family that contains those chemicals. Creates a very unique shopping experience. And while we were founded in 1975, the fun that we're having now is the tremendous uptick in our growth. We're approaching 50 stores in 10 states, and we have a real estate pipeline to grow the business at 25% a year thereafter. So it's quite an undertaking for the team, a highly spirited team. At the same time, Earth Fair needed additional business intelligence to help us see our way forward.
Yeah, and you've really become a leader now in the adoption of AI. I mean, your story has been covered by us here at CART and in Progressive Grocer and Grocery Business, Retail Wire, and I think most recently NRF's Stores Magazine. Like, what had you, or why did you decide to head down the path towards adopting AI with Daisy? Like, what were you hoping to achieve?
Well, as we really move to a substantial growth phase in our business and open new stores between Kalamazoo, Michigan and Florida, we really needed to focus our merchants and our operators on two things. One, the innovation required to continue to inspire our customers from the merchandising side, and the operators in fostering the spirit to grow enough team members in our business to lead our stores forward as we open them across the eastern seaboard here. And so we needed an additional platform to help us feel more secure in the decisions we were making about how we go to market and promote to our customers. We found ourselves sitting on a mountain of data. We, like many retailers, probably every retailer now, we have a tremendous data warehouse. But that data warehouse, of course, required our merchants and our analysts to spend many, many cycles crunching those data in order to try to predict the future. Gary alluded to it. We were crunching historical data. We don't have in and of ourselves, and did not have at that time, to crunch future data and pull numerous scenarios forward in order to take a look at or game what would happen under certain scenarios. Some we could contemplate, and frankly, some we could not contemplate. Easter bunnies, I suppose, might be partially between those two, as Gary's example. Parenthetically, it was not ours. Our interest in working with Daisy came, Gary and I met, and I was very intrigued that the notion of the incredible amount of insights we could gain in, but not having to do the grinding inside of our business. That is, our merchants would be able to have insights into a portal where all of the heavy lifting was being done really by Gary's organization or by his system. So that was highly intriguing to us. What's more, as we knew that it was going to be important for us to look at our promotions not 1 week at a time, but over time, what they meant to, and we're trying to change the way we talk inside the house here at Earth Fair, and not the power of a promotion so much as the power of the total impact that that comes from the basket with the promotion. So basket as function of promotion is the way we think about it. And of course, we wanted to have a better grasp of when and how we might be cannibalizing the future or the current time. And those scenarios needed to be run while we had an enormous amount of work being asked for by our team members to open 25% new stores. So I was very intrigued when I first met Gary with the power of what his team was putting together, and that really helped us catalyze getting our data together.
Great. And, I think your comments around the volume of data you had is a good one. And so, Gary, to come back to you, a lot of people talk about how humans can crunch all this data, right? We've got database systems and BI tools. Why do you think AI is different? Like, why will it be applied in some of these core merchandising decisions, like promotional planning going forward?
Yeah, I think it's not a human task. It's very difficult. And retail is a difficult business, and you see most groceries are in the 1% to 3% net margin, because it's a tough business. If you have 50,000 products, SKUs in your store, and you're going to pick 500 products to put in your paper circular or your in-store ad or on your mobile app every week, that means there's 6 times 10 to the power of 3,600 possible combinations of products you could put out there. 10 to the 3,600 is massive. There's only 10 to the power of 80 atoms and molecules in the universe. The game of Go, which you've heard the Google DeepMind recently beat, is only 10 to the power of 200. Retail is orders of magnitude more complex than the game of Go. So that's why it's not a human task. This is sheer massive number of computations. We can do better than the people. Not to say that the merchants today aren't doing a great job, because they work for companies like Earth Fair that are wildly successful and growing. But if you want to squeeze out the last 2, 3, 4% of sales, which goes right to the bottom line and can have a significant impact when you're a 1% to 3% net margin business, that last mile requires the artificial intelligence and the massive computational power to go search this infinite sea of possibilities. So it's taking an A student today and turning him into an A+ student. That's where AI can be the best assistant that an experienced and seasoned merchant ever had.
Wow, so it's literally impossible for humans to be able to do that many calculations, at least fast enough, that make that kind of difference, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the difference of the number of computations that are required to do this, and that's where it's beyond human capability. Once you start looking at all the ripple effects that one product promotion affects all other products. If you have 50,000 products, promoting organic lettuce will impact ground beef and every other product as well. And the human brain can only handle half a dozen facts at one moment in time. So that's where the computation comes to the table and helps make a difference.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people would say big data is here, right? We have all of this information, and it's almost cost of entry to understand the different data points in your business and everything going on. And along with it are the analytics, right? How is AI really different than some of the traditional analytics?
Well, I think it starts first with computing power. When we founded Daisy, when I founded Daisy in 2003, since then, Moore's Law means that $500,000 of computer equipment today would have cost $625 million when we founded the company. So computing power has made a huge difference, which means we can now analyze 100% of the data. I don't have to sample, looking at just a certain product's transactions to analyze those. We can actually take 100% of the data. We can actually make a reasonable attempt to try to compute all those combinations from the previous slide that exist out there. We can now consider all the ripple effects, the fact that every promotion, every product promoted, every price affects every other product. Those ripples are what weren't possible before because the computing power wasn't there. The ability now to simulate all of those ripples is really the leap forward, and that's different than the traditional analytics. You couldn't even do this, a human being sitting at a desktop with an analytical tool from one of the technology vendors. You couldn't have 1,000 analysts do this work to figure out what is going on. In a retailer with 50,000 products, like Earth Fare with 50 stores, millions of customers, there's literally too many moving parts. And I think that's what differentiates 100% of the data, the ability to look at all the ripples and analyze all of those moving parts, and the ability to self-adjust. And in this new world of cloud computing, you don't have to do a big systems integration project. We don't have to go into a company like Earth Fare and really disrupt the business by installing new equipment and installing software and making dramatic change to process. So I think that's where AI is really different. The pace that we can bring it to the table is much different than the old world of systems integration and limited computing power.
Wow, yeah. And so, Frank, tell us about the journey. I mean, it sounds like it was a really smooth transition for you guys, at least from a technical standpoint.
Sure. Thanks, Sterling. So I guess it's been a fun journey, quite candidly, and one that really fit with what we're trying to accomplish at Earth Fare. As you'd imagine, we're trying to deploy our capital into new stores and transforming the business. So an appetite for substantial investments in either software or more hardware to our infrastructure was a little bit farther down the decision tree for us. So the ability for Daisy and Gary to collaborate with our team beginning 18 months ago made it quite easy for us. And the request of Daisy in what we shared with them for our data was very intriguing to us, that they asked for the most disaggregated, let's call it T-log data. And that was very intriguing to us because as a retailer with a certain data warehouse that sits on top of a set of data that are collected on a daily basis, there are certain lenses that get created by the familiarity with the drilling and the way we look at data. Daisy's ask is to send them the most disaggregated data, our transactional level data, which really gets to the root of every customer's behavior, identified or not, part of our loyalty system or not. And I think that lends itself to some of the power that we're seeing. So we sent over a tremendous amount of data that then they worked on, and we'd send a stream of data each day, of course, from our sales. Then that was quickly assembled into a user interface that our existing category managers and our director of merchandising planning use today and used back then 18 months ago. Gary, of course, you and your team have been very flexible with us in making a number of, let's call them slight customizations to make it work for our business. And so the teams have worked very diligently together. And we have the dials that we need to control how we optimize promotions and drive feet and basket without making incremental investment into the margin rate of the business. So as we find certainly the hyper-competitive nature of the grocery business continues to stay the same, that is, it's hyper-competitive and even increase, we needed to get more basket without investing substantial rate to do so. So that is the flexibility and what we're seeing on our side here in the process so far. What's more is that... No, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sterling. Well, I would just add...
I've been in the business a long time, and I don't think I've heard more than a handful of retailers say, oh, I had a lot of fun with this technology implementation project.
Well, it's very interesting that I think, take as an example, what we probably all do at one time or another is promotional planning. And a lot of the promotional planning in retail, of course, is calendar-based and creates a certain amount of repetitiveness that's induced by ourselves and our customer, or excuse me, our competitors. But what was very difficult was to crack the mold and do a bunch of forward-looking what-if analyses on what would happen if we tried different things without taking the potential injury of trying those things. And so that's rather fun. And looking at some of the empirically based evidence that Daisy helps us look at, we know that the total effectiveness of our promotions, not the promotions themselves, but what it means to the total sales of the business is what we are trying to plan now, which is very different than what we've been involved in the past. And that, it makes it quite fun for our team to look at it in a new way and spend less time doing it. So they're more powerful. They're more powerful merchants, and they're investing less time to get there.
Yeah, and so Gary, how does this work on the Daisy side? How does it all come together on the back end?
I just wanted to add one comment to Frank's previous slide there. I mean, Frank and his team at Earthfare have been the ideal client. It's been a strong collaboration between the two sides to get there. Certainly Daisy has a technical solution, and we can implement that in isolation. But without the partnership with Earthfare, and I think that collaboration has really been a key part of our success. In terms of the technical implementation, as Frank said, we typically take raw historical transaction data, so all the point of sale receipts, every single line on a paper receipt would be a line record in a database. We would take the data from all channels, if you had e-commerce channels and other channels, that historical data. Typically, we'd like to take 5+ years of history, as much as our clients are willing to give us. In the case of Earthfare, we took about 5 years of historical transaction data and took 5 years of promotional history. Then the data, as it gets onboarded, typically takes a month to onboard the data technically, and in that 1 month we fit our theory of retail to the data, which is kind of setting up that simulation engine and starting to train Daisy. It's an empty kind of decision-making system, and we train it up for that month. And then once it comes time to deliver, typically promotional decisions are made on a weekly basis at most retailers, and certainly that's what we did with Frank's team. We met on a weekly basis. Daisy would run its simulations every week. We'd get the new data for the previous week. We'd run the simulation for as many days as we could, many hours in that 1 week period. And then the output of Daisy is really a set of decision recommendations. So the user for Daisy is a merchant. It's not a statistical analyst. The output can be directly executed. The output is lists of products, lists of prices, forecasts, and these are things that the merchants can review and edit and make changes as they know some information that Daisy doesn't always know. Daisy might not know the vendor that's involved, might not know the availability of certain produce items due to adverse weather conditions or bad growing seasons, or perhaps the availability of CPG products might be not there in volume at the particular time. So the merchants come in with their last up-to-the-minute knowledge of what's available along with Daisy's recommendations, and then it gets executed in the marketplace. And the day after the promotion ends in the stores or in the online channels, Daisy will then conduct a financial analysis of the results and publish that back to the users to review.
Awesome. And so with all of that data you look at, share a little more about how you examine all of those different variables to decide on the best course of action, how that output is really the best case scenario.
Sure. As I talked earlier about the ripple effects, I mean, one of the primary drivers of consumers coming into a store, typically consumers will have a use case. They're coming into the store to fulfill meal needs for a week. Let's say you're buying a week of groceries. And if you see a promotional advertisement in the paper circular that says ground chuck is on sale, a consumer that says, great, I'm going to make an Italian dinner. We're going to buy, that means with ground chuck is a product that you don't consume alone. The use case for ground chuck typically involves other products. So you might buy some tomato sauce and some pasta for that Italian dinner. If you're making hamburgers with ground chuck, you'll buy condiments and hamburger buns. If you're making a Mexican dinner, you might buy taco shells and salsa. But the ground beef requires the use case that every consumer will buy something else. Contrast that to a case of water. The use case for water is just buy the water. You don't need another product to use that, to use water. Therefore, if you promote products with a large use case that appeals to a wide variety of consumers, your average transaction size and the number of transactions will be larger. So these are some of the ripple effects. But then you can't overstate the results. Typically, just because last week I sold 100 pounds of ground chuck and this week I sold 200 doesn't mean that there was 100 incremental pounds sold. You have to net out the cannibalization or product displacement. So in this example here, because you bought a brand of organic yogurt which was on promotion, you didn't buy Liberté. So not 100% of that incremental sales was positive because there was a displacement. Because I bought hamburger meat, ground chuck to make hamburgers, I didn't buy hot dogs. That's a natural displacement. There's also a displacement in the halo. Because I bought hamburger buns, I didn't buy hot dog buns. So you have to subtract all the negatives. You also have to look forward in time. Because I promoted a non-perishable product like coffee, I did fair trade coffee this week, I stock up, the consumer will buy 2 or 3 weeks supply. So now the consumer is out of the market for 2 or 3 weeks. So to measure the true incremental impact, you have to take into account all the ripples in the current week as well as in future weeks. And on top of that, you need to take into account price elasticity of the product, promotional elasticity, what happens when you put the product in the circular or on the website, seasonality, weather effects, competitive effects. So the number of attributes becomes astronomical. We actually have, in the billions and trillions of attributes, which again makes this beyond human capability and where the AI comes in and can explore all of this information.
And the bottom line to all of this is that it really works. Now, I know EarthFair is a private company, and we're not sharing hard dollars, but we can get into some percentages here. And the net promotional effectiveness is up 11%. Frank, share a little bit about that, if you would.
Sure. So what Daisy helps us do is identify our internal vernacular, not Dairy's, but the power of the items that we're promoting, not only in the amount that we will sell of that particular promoted item, but what it means to the overall basket, both in the week in which we're promoting and then its impact going forward in particular. And so when our merchants get suggestions from Daisy, as was alluded to earlier in Gary's remarks, it's a system that's giving you a solution. You're not grinding. So as an example, let's say we're presented with 30 items that, given all of the analytics, we should promote this week. Our merchants then bounce that up against the things that are unique to the season or growing or other things in the background that Daisy may not be being fed by our database, make certain decisions based on the timing of those promotions. Ultimately, future state is the pricing of those promotions, not yet underway. That will unleash more power to the system as we go forward. And over time, we look at what's called an index of those items that we're promoting. And Daisy has helped our team raise the power of those items that we're promoting. And that's where that 11% promotional effectiveness comes from. And I would just emphasize, again, it's not just the items we're promoting, but what it means to the overall basket as Daisy helps us understand what we're trying to solve for our customers in a data-driven way.
Yeah, and Gary, is this standard with the Daisy technology? Are these kinds of results things that retailers can expect working with you?
Yeah, I think the artificial intelligence, its goal is to grow our clients' sales, and that's the mission of the AI. And this slide here shows how we measure the results. And we typically, if Daisy doesn't deliver incremental results, then we're out of business because we're not installing hardware and software. So the service is designed to grow sales, or it's a failure. And so we've been fortunate to have great clients to work with, and we've had success with all the clients to date. And so one of the key measurements here, as I alluded to in the previous slide, was, to measure all the positives and negatives. So typically, to measure the results, you'd look at what's the baseline sales of items that are not promoted. And then when you promote those items, you would get an incremental lift over the baseline. And most retailers measure this today, the baseline and the increment over the baseline. Then where Daisy comes in, Daisy would say, well, let's subtract off the cannibalization. That gets a little more complex to measure. Let's look at the halo sales, the incremental halo. So the halo sales has a baseline as well. So we then measure just what's the incremental halo due to a product's promotion. We then subtract off the cannibalization for the halo, as well as the forward buying or pantry loading effect for the halo and the item itself. And the sum of all those positives and negatives is the net promotional effect, which we then share with our clients. We can also measure the lost revenue due to stockouts and the lost opportunity that could have possibly been measured using 100% of Daisy's recommendations. And that's part of the work with the merchants to prove that Daisy works and try to close the gap between Daisy believes is optimal and what clients actually execute. So this measurement methodology is key to share the results. And this is what Daisy's optimizing. Daisy's optimizing net promotional effect, which is the largest contributor to year-over-year difference in sales. We find that net promotional effect explains the year-over-year variation in sales performance. So good net promotional effect results in good year-over-year sales growth. That's been the correlation and what Daisy's artificial intelligence is optimizing.
And this is all SaaS. And the great thing about SaaS is that it evolves and it changes over time. And I was hearing a little bit about your version 1. It was a little rough. And how did you get from that to where you are today?
Well, the technology evolves. That's the beauty of artificial intelligence. It continues to learn, and then working with clients to get hard constructive feedback, because the goal is to grow sales and having great clients who are partners like Earth Fare and Frank's team. Frank's leadership really spilled over into the team to be open-minded to try this. And so it's that working together with the client with a system that is self-learning. Those two things really helped us get over the hump with our clients. It's that collaborative learning experience, and that's baked into artificial intelligence.
Yeah, I love how closely you guys work together on this. Go ahead.
Yeah, just this screen, I'll just quickly, this is kind of an example output in our portal. As I said earlier, Daisy provides lists of decisions, which are, here's a list of products to promote. Typically, we do this at the one level above UPC. UPC is too detailed, so if you have, like blueberry yogurt or raspberry yogurt or strawberry yogurt, you would say yogurt is the level that you want to promote at, because you're going to promote every flavor. And then Daisy gamifies the decision into a rank, what we call the Daisy performance rank. So the ultimate output of the entire simulation is a ranking to say, what is the rank of this decision compared to all other decisions in its ability to grow total sales. And so the game is very simple. Choose products to promote with a lower rank. And we provide a relative index to show what's the difference between two different rankings, so that you can see what's the difference between number 73 and number 42 in terms of an index. And Daisy provides another, number of information historically about the product, so it's not a black box. It's important to have the merchants believe in the output. So we provide a number of inputs around promotional elasticity, price history, what did the product do previous years, what were historical price points, etc.
And Frank, what else have you observed in this process as you've been working with Gary and the Daisy team on rolling it out and using it?
I think I think the most exciting thing we're seeing right now is the machine is learning, and it's becoming more powerful as we continue to interact with it and feed it more data, and that's got the merchants rather excited. Gary alluded to it. There's certainly a cultural adjustment that category managers and analysts really have to move some of their cycles more towards creativity and innovation as the machine does more work for them. So that was some of the undertaking that went on in the EarthFare team, and I think we've come to a place now where the team's more inspired by the system. It helps them really get more done during the week. It's very powerful now to watch that, and this may have been more of potentially a weakness in our organization, quite candidly, but the ability to balance rate across different areas of the box when you're promoting, that requires a lot of analytics that I guess some do better than others, but to really give you some insight, we now are trading, if you will, between various category managers and particular departments in the business to get the best overall outcome. And that's been a substantial unlock to our net promotional effect as well. So those are very important. I think the team is starting to see that gain steam over time as it learns.
Yeah, and we ran a case study on this at CART, and I still can't get over the lift. We've got a chart here, Gary, if you can kind of share with us, what are we looking at here on the project results?
So this shows a graph of the net promotional effect over a number of weeks. So this is, I think, roughly 20 weeks or so. The blue line, the blue dotted line, is the net promotional effectiveness in 2016. The red dotted line is the net promotional effectiveness in 2017. So we can see that working together with EarthFare, we've been able to take what was a kind of a flat net promotional effectiveness, which is what we typically see because our customers have always done what they've always done, and so the net promotional effect tends to be stable over time. And then working together, we were able to see this market difference where at the end of 2017, we're seeing that, it's about, looks like 40% of total sales is net promotion effect. So that's not promotional penetration. That's the total basket in the promotion. So we're saying that we're able to impact a larger percentage of sales, which is the tie between net promotional effect and total sales. And so this gap, you can see at the beginning of the year, the gap was small, and as the teams worked well together and the system learned, the gap has continued to widen. And we see now as we get into other opportunities, which we'll talk about, we hope with Earth Fare to continue this path and continue to support Frank and his team on their financial objectives.
Awesome. And just briefly, before we kind of wrap this up and move into the Q&A, produce was a particular success there, right?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things Daisy does in some cases, it supports conjectures or knowledge that the merchants have. The merchants are experts. They've been doing this for decades. So sometimes Daisy validates in a very quantifiable way what the merchants are doing. Sometimes we come up with new ideas and opportunities. Here's just examples from other clients as well as Earth Fare. In one case, a client would never promote bananas because they felt they couldn't be the lowest price in the market. So Daisy myth busted and said, even though you're not the lowest price in the market, you'll still get an incremental lift in sales because consumers aren't all-knowing and omniscient about where the best products are. Sometimes we also noted that a lot of retailers use vendor dollars to fund their circulars and their promotions, and we've been able to quantify what's the difference between taking the vendor money and using the incremental value Daisy creates, or in the best of both worlds, being able to double dip and take vendor money on products and promotions that result in a lift. And similar, we've done new products that have never been done before. In the case of avocados with one of our clients, they'd never done that product before in the flyer, and that resulted in great results. And importantly, knowing what's the cadence and frequency of doing promotions, that not over-promoting, not under-promoting, knowing kind of what the right timing is. These are all the guiding inputs that Daisy can provide to the merchants and hopefully make their job easier and let them use their experience combined with, the best assistant to generate the, significant incremental gains.
Fantastic. So, Frank, what's next for you and Earth Fare?
Well, we'll continue our store growth, of course, and particular to our collaboration with Gary and his team, we are now moving to a place as Daisy gets a little bit more knowledgeable about our business that we're going to take a look at what price optimization may hold with Daisy at its level and ability to analyze data. That's one. And the other, there is a potential for Daisy and putting all of the factors that go into location decision-making for stores to get another data point in the real estate decision-making process. So Gary and I are working on the future of what that looks like for us.
Very cool. And we talked a little bit about in the beginning all these external pressures, and I love that AI is really supporting you, not just in promotions, but now into some of these other areas. And Gary, probably an appropriate question for you. What do you see as this next wave of disruption for grocers?
I think looking at, beyond promotional product selection and promotional effectiveness, getting into pricing is an area that we're working with several customers, including Earth Fare on. And I think optimizing pricing will generate, again, more incremental lift and improve gross margin percentage. A lot of retailers over-promote the halo that goes along with a product, so price optimization can help improve blended margin. Getting into forecasting, so being able to forecast more accurately so you don't have excess inventory, don't have lost revenue. Typically, the industry benchmark is around 30% error in forecasting, and we've been able to deliver accuracies around 10% or less on many products. And ultimately, it's about listening to customers. The transactions is an ongoing customer communication, and being able to listen to what customers are telling the businesses they shop at, and really starting to personalize some of the recommendations. We're also looking at fraud management, identifying shrink is typically a big issue in retail, so identifying opportunities to minimize shrink as well. So these are all great use cases that we see that we're working with several clients on.
Great. And last question to kind of close it out with you, Frank, is, as a guy that's been in retail for a lot of years, spent his career in it, what do you see as what's next for the industry?
Well, I would say for retail, it's kind of an exciting time for retail. I guess there's certainly a lot of new perspective given the Amazon move. We look at it as the confirmation that clicks needs bricks. And one of the things that we have noticed over the years, probably becoming very pronounced in 2007 and beyond, is the compression of the need to continuously reinvent yourself and become more relevant and meaningful to your customer. Hence, really the excitement around continuing to give our category managers the opportunity to innovate while some of the homework gets done by Daisy, as an example. And so the industry is more exciting now than it's ever been. I think when you look at artificial intelligence for retail, particularly with the scale that we currently have in our business, the sweat to bread for something like this is just perfectly situated for us to be able to get a team that has a scale to move the culture along rather readily, put something very new in the business, and have it be very impactful with in this case, no capital investment, and certainly a lot of focus on our team's part. So it's an exciting time, to say the least.
It is. I agree with you. A lot of things are happening, and it's really cool to see AI having such a great, successful use case with you guys at Earth Fare and Daisy. And I think there's some real benefits here, right, around the results that come from AI really moving more and more of those repetitive tasks to the AI, so the employees can really focus on some of those more strategic initiatives. And we've heard a little bit today that, it does come with changes, the decision-making processes and structures and so on. And AI can actually be this invisible advantage, right? It's not like a competitor opening a new store, deploying marketing dollars where you can see it. It's more along the lines of like a gas leak, where there's not time to react. It's this intelligence that sits behind the stores and their business. And Gary and Frank, I really appreciate you sharing with us today. So many great points we can actually take back to our businesses. And in doing that, I'm sure our audience has a couple of questions. The first one I see here, Frank, is for you. Did you have a sense of really knowing this would work for you?
Well, certainly when Gary and I first met and he unpacked the detail of how it works, the extraordinary ability to 1 times 10 to the 36,000th power of calculations, which, there was a lot of excitement built by that. Certainly there was another test case that was shared with us in a de-identified way that had some compelling results. And so that gave us pretty good optimism that it would work if we could be nimble enough to move in that direction and really have our team embrace it. We had some bumps around the road about embracing it, but we have arrived there, and like I said, there's a lot of excitement around it now.
Yeah, and feeds into the second question also for you, Frank, is how long did it take Earth Fare to adapt to this new role of being more creative with the length of time before you really saw some of the results, before the systems began to learn and you saw the benefits?
Well, we've been at it for a little over 18 months. And I would say, and Gary, help me here because we're in this thing together, but, within about 90 days of plugging machinery in the background, we were starting to get suggestions. One of the big time constraints inside of retail, and I suppose the audience here today, is promotional planning is quite a drain on time. It often takes more than one turn of the crank to get the promotion right for any given period. We started to see the process for landing a set of promotions contract. That was the first thing we saw, freeing up time for our merchants. And then the ability to plan promotions further in the future came after that. So that's kind of step one and step two. And step three now is they're getting more powerful as time goes by. And we alluded to the potential 4 and 5, which is pricing and maybe something with decision-making analytics around capital assets.
Yeah, I would just add,
Great.
I think our first output comes out in about, typically 3 months. The first output is typically, insane. The Daisy has to learn, and that's where the back and forth with our customers comes. And with Frank's team, typically planning 8 to 12 weeks in advance. Then you're seeing results in the market in kind of 6 to 9 months when we start to see real benefits. And then from there, the learning really starts to kick off. So it's typically 6 to 9 months to see real measurable benefits, and then the system starts to accelerate from there, and we get more buy-in and collaboration as the teams see the benefit.
And Gary, I think this next question is most appropriate for you. Are vendor deals taken into consideration where the merchant might choose an item that contributes more to profit based on the rebate or off invoice amount?
Yes, for some of our clients who manage vendor deals as a data source, they provide us that data in advance, and Daisy uses that in the financial optimization. So if you recall that net promotional effect bar chart, we could add a positive increment for vendor money, and Daisy would take that into account in the decision-making world. And ideally, using vendor data with some of our clients, pushing the planning process of a little bit earlier, gives them ammunition to talk to the vendors to find out to get deals on the good items that generate incremental results. So we're working on that with a few clients who've kind of pushed some of their high-level planning up a quarter.
Awesome. And I've got a question here from a 65-store chain company. Kind of summarizing it, how much data do you need? They've got a 3-year-old company, and is 3 years enough data, or how much data do you need to really make it work, to see the returns?
I'd say the ideal minimum would be, to have 2 years, so you at least have one seasonal cycle. So having 3 years would be a very good start. We've worked with some retailers with, less than a year of data, and then the system learns slower as the data accumulates. But a minimum of 2 years would be ideal.
Got it. Thank you. And that is just about all the time we have today. I want to thank you all for your time and your interest, and it's really been great being with you. And I just want to thank you again, Gary and Frank, for joining us. Just really quick final thoughts. Let's start with you, Gary.
Yeah, we're excited about artificial intelligence. Having worked in this space for 20 years, it's been great, and I couldn't have asked for a better first client with Frank and his team. Such forward-thinking company looking to grow, has been an ideal partner for us, and has really helped us evolve as a business as well. And so it's been a great partnership. And as Frank said, it wasn't perfect all the way, and Frank was a great partner in helping us work through all the issues. I see nothing but this accelerating. We see continuing challenge in retail, and I think AI is a game that every company needs to get into. The ones that are late to the game will be the have-nots, and I think it's important capabilities to build in and to find practical applications in your business.
For sure. And last thoughts from you, Frank.
Yeah, thank you, Sterling. And Gary, it's been great to connect with you in this forum. Our team's excited about what Daisy brings. It's becoming more powerful as the weeks go on here for the merchants. We continue to grow our business, and in a hyper-competitive market, we look to differentiate ourselves every day for our customers, and we have to take advantage of opportunities like artificial intelligence, which created because of Moore's Law, as Gary suggested earlier, but makes it affordable for smaller scale companies that if they're nimble enough, like I see our team being, we're able to leverage something that I think is powerful now and only has the opportunity to help us as we grow our business.
Great. Gary, Frank, thank you again. Really appreciate your time, and thanks everybody for joining us here today. At the end of these talks, we always, you're welcome. At the end of these talks, we always have this choice, right? We can walk out and now we know a couple more things, and we heard about AI, and isn't it cool? And we have that knowledge. Or we can take an action and reach out to Daisy and have a conversation that can actually make a difference. So I hope today has been of value and worth your time, and I'm really looking forward to connecting with all of you as we kind of move through this fourth industrial revolution and start deploying AI in our businesses. And that concludes our webinar. As a reminder, you'll receive an email when the on-demand recording of today's event is available. And on behalf of our sponsors and us, thank you for joining us. And we hope you have a really great day. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.